The ship hummed as it descended, the kind of hum that made Jim Hawkins suspect the engineers aboard had slapped some tape over something important and called it a day. The diplomatic vessel, Aegis, was sleek, silver, and packed to the brim with representatives from a dozen species, most of whom were arguing over whose ambassadorial sash deserved the best lighting in the ceremonial hall. Jim leaned back against a bulkhead, arms crossed, watching the chaos with the bemused detachment of a man who'd seen far too many interstellar ego contests. "Lieutenant Hawkins," barked Commander Richter, a barrel-chested man with a voice like gravel in a blender. "Are you ready for first contact procedures?" Jim straightened, tugging at the stiff collar of his ceremonial uniform. "Yes, sir." Practiced my bowing, nodding, and looking appropriately fascinated by alien architecture. "I'm ready to dazzle." Richter didn't smile. He never smiled. "Just don't embarrass Earth. You're here as security, not a comedian." As if on cue, a holographic panel flared to life beside them, displaying a countdown to atmospheric entry. Jim glanced at it, then at the commander. "Permission to make a joke about crash landings?" "Denied," Richter snapped, stalking off. The planet Zelhora loomed in the viewport, a shimmering sphere of golden oceans and iridescent continents that seemed to ripple like living metal under the light of its twin suns. The delegation had been preparing for this mission for months. The Zelhorans were a reclusive species, technologically advanced but socially enigmatic, known only through sparse accounts from wandering traders who spoke of their brilliance and their baffling sense of humor. As the ship touched down on a vast platform carved from crystalline rock, the delegation disembarked with all the pomp and circumstance of an intergalactic beauty pageant. Jim, in contrast, walked at the rear, scanning the alien skyline with quiet curiosity. Towering spires of translucent material pierced the sky, their surfaces glowing faintly with ever-shifting patterns. Zelhora was alive with light, a kaleidoscope of movement and color that danced across every surface. Standing at the base of the platform was the Zelhoran welcoming party, a dozen tall, elegant figures whose skin shimmered like liquid starlight. They moved with a grace that made Jim acutely aware of how clunky humans looked by comparison. "Lieutenant Hawkins," a voice called. Jim turned to see a Zelhoran stepping forward, a young female with hair like molten silver cascading down her back. Her large, luminescent eyes fixed on him, and for a moment, he felt like he was being scanned by a very polite star. "I am Kayrell," she said, her voice smooth, yet playful, with a lilting cadence that made even her formal greeting sound like a joke waiting to be told. "Your assigned guide and interpreter. Try not to get lost, yes?" Jim smirked. "I make no promises." Kayrell's eyes brightened momentarily, and her skin took on a faint gold hue. "At least you're honest. Humans have a reputation for wandering into trouble, though I suppose that's why you brought weapons." "Strictly ceremonial," Jim replied, patting the sidearm at his hip, "unless someone cuts in line at the buffet." To his surprise, Kayrell laughed, a quick, melodic sound that echoed faintly in the crystalline air. "You'll fit in here better than I thought." As the delegation was led through the glowing streets of the Zelhoran capital, Jim found himself walking beside Kayrell, asking questions about everything from their architecture to their baffling transportation system, a series of floating platforms that seemed to follow no discernible logic. "How do you tell where these things are going?" Jim asked, stepping cautiously onto one. "Instinct," Kayrell replied, as their platform began gliding toward an ornate spire. "Ah yes, very scientific," Jim said. "Do they come with seatbelts?" "Only for those with poor instincts," Kayrell shot back, her glow shifting subtly as she spoke, a faint pink now, like the edge of a sunrise. Their banter continued until they arrived at the council chambers, where the Zelhoran elders awaited. The massive hall was carved from a single piece of crystalline rock, its walls alive with flowing patterns of light. The Earth delegation filed in, bowing stiffly in the direction of the elders. Jim, as the designated security officer, hung back, his gaze wandering across the chamber. Then it happened. Carell approached him, gesturing for him to step aside as the formal proceedings began. Their eyes met, briefly at first, but something about her gaze held him in place. Her eyes, vast and liquid, seemed to reflect the entire room, and Jim, for a reason he couldn't explain, didn't look away. Carell froze, her glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. The golden hue spread across her skin, flickering like a flame. Her composure wavered, her posture stiffening. Jim blinked. Are you okay? You're glowing more than usual." Carell's voice came out rushed and clipped. "I am fine. You should stop looking at me now." Jim held up his hands. "Noted. No staring. Got it." Carell stepped back, muttering something under her breath in her own language. She turned away quickly, her glow dimming but not entirely disappearing. Jim watched her retreat, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "Well, that's one way to make an impression," he murmured. From his earpiece, Commander Richter's voice crackled. "Hawkins, focus. This isn't the time for flirting." "Noted, sir," Jim replied, still watching Carell as she melted into the crowd of Zelhorans. "But I think we might have accidentally invented intergalactic awkwardness." As the delegation continued their work, Jim couldn't shake the memory of Carell's reaction, or the faint, golden afterglow that seemed to linger in the air long after she'd gone. Zelhora's light never dimmed. It wasn't just the twin suns that bathed the planet in perpetual golden hues. Every surface, every object, seemed to pulse faintly, as if the world itself was alive and breathing. For Jim Hawkins, it was both mesmerizing and mildly disorienting, especially when the walls of his assigned quarters decided to display swirling patterns of light that followed him around like curious fireflies. He groaned, flopping onto the oddly buoyant bed that felt like lying on a giant marshmallow. "You'd think advanced civilizations would have figured out curtains," he muttered. The door chimed. Before he could answer, it slid open, and Carell stepped inside, her glow subdued, but her expression anything but. "Do Zelhorans not believe in knocking, or is that just a personal quirk?" Jim asked, sitting up. Carell tilted her head, her luminous eyes narrowing slightly. "Your door lacks the Zelhoran glyph for occupied. If you wish for privacy, I can etch one for you." Jim blinked. "You're saying I need to hang a sign so people don't barge in?" Carell nodded solemnly. "That is the standard protocol." "Well, that's logical," Jim said, scratching the back of his neck. "So what brings you here? Another lesson on Zelhoran customs? Or are you just here to keep me from embarrassing myself again?" Carell's glow shifted to a faint lavender, a color Jim was quickly learning signaled amusement. "Both. The elders noticed your curiosity during the council meeting and have approved my request to give you a tour of the capital." "A tour?" Jim echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Am I the first human to get the VIP treatment, or do you offer this to all clueless newcomers?" Carell smiled, her glow warming. "Let's just say you've earned special attention." "Special attention? Is that a compliment or a warning?" Jim quipped as he stood and followed her out. The streets of Zelhora's capital were a bustling maze of light and motion. Floating platforms crisscrossed the sky, carrying passengers and cargo with no discernible traffic rules. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved in synchronized harmony, their glowing skins creating a living tapestry of color. As Carell guided Jim through the city, she explained the intricacies of Zelhoran culture. "Our communication is layered," she said, her hands weaving patterns in the air. "We speak with our voices, but the true meaning lies in the light we emit. Words are only part of the conversation." Jim nodded, watching the subtle changes in her glow as she spoke. "So you're saying I've been missing half the conversation this whole time? Great. I'm probably walking around here like a guy trying to decode an alien Rubik's Cube." Carell's laughter was like chimes in the wind. "You're not entirely wrong, but your attempts are endearing." They stopped at a market square, where vendors sold everything from glowing fruits to intricately carved artifacts that seemed to hum faintly when touched. Jim picked up a small orb that lit up in his palm, its glow shifting in response to his movements. "What's this?" he asked. "A memory sphere," Carell replied. "It captures fragments of light and sound from significant moments. Think of it as a diary, but far more elegant." Jim held it up, watching as faint images flickered within the orb. "Huh. Beats writing Dear Diary every night." Carell tilted her head. "You keep a diary?" "Only when I need to vent about nosy alien guides," Jim shot back with a grin. Carell's glow shifted to a soft gold, and she quickly turned away, pretending to inspect a nearby stall. The tour continued with stops at Zelhora's towering spires, where translucent bridges spanned dizzying heights, and at a garden where the plants glowed faintly, releasing melodic hums as they swayed. Jim couldn't help but marvel at the planet's seamless blend of nature and technology. "You've mastered harmony," he said, as they walked along a shimmering pathway. "Everything here feels connected." Carell nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We believe in unity, in the flow of energy between all things. Light is not just illumination, it is life, emotion, and memory." Jim smirked. "And here I thought light was just for keeping the dark at bay." Carell glanced at him, her glow tinged with pink again. "You humans simplify everything." "Guilty as charged," Jim said, holding up his hands. Their next stop was a towering library carved from a single piece of crystal. Inside, beams of light projected images and texts into the air, creating a constantly shifting mosaic of knowledge. Jim paused before one display, which showed an intricate diagram of Zelhoran anatomy. "Is that—" He pointed at a cluster of glowing nodes that seemed to pulse in synchronization. Carell's glow dimmed slightly. "Our light glands," she said, her tone more subdued. "They are the source of our bioluminescence and are deeply tied to our emotions and biology." Jim raised an eyebrow. "So, when you glow brighter, it's like blushing?" Carell hesitated, then nodded. "In a way. But it is more complex than that. It is not something we discuss lightly." Sensing her discomfort, Jim decided to lighten the mood. "Well, if it makes you feel better, humans get weird when they blush too. Faces turn red, voices crack. It's not pretty." Carell's glow brightened slightly, and she gave him a sidelong glance. "I find it hard to believe your species could be unattractive." Jim chuckled. "Trust me, we have our moments. You should see us when we're sick, walking disasters." Carell's laughter returned, and the tension between them eased. As the day wound down, they found themselves at a quiet overlook, watching the city's lights ripple like waves. "This planet," Jim said softly, "is like nothing I've ever seen. It's beautiful." Carell's glow deepened, a faint gold edging into the lavender. "Thank you. I hope your time here brings understanding, not just admiration." Jim glanced at her, and for a moment, their eyes met again. The air seemed to shift, and Carell's glow flared briefly before she looked away, her light dimming. "Sorry," Jim said quickly. "I didn't mean to—" "It's fine," Carell interrupted, her voice steady, but her glow betraying her unease. "Just try not to stare too long." Jim nodded, though his curiosity only deepened. Something about her reaction felt significant, but he wasn't about to press her. Not yet. As they returned to the delegation quarters, Jim couldn't shake the feeling that Zelhora held more secrets than its glowing streets revealed, and that Carell was at the heart of them. The Zelhoran celebration had all the hallmarks of a party Jim Hawkins had no idea how to survive. Music that was more vibration than sound pulsed through the air, resonating in his chest. The glowing spires surrounding the open plaza pulsed in rhythm, their light shifting from cool blues to warm ambers with every beat. Beings of dozens of species swirled together in an unstructured but oddly synchronized dance, each movement leaving behind faint trails of luminescent color. "This," Jim muttered to Carell as he stood awkwardly at the edge of the crowd, "is like a rave where the glow sticks got organized and staged a coup." Carell turned to him, her glow a faint silver that Jim had learned to associate with calm amusement. "Do humans not celebrate with such vitality?" "Oh, we celebrate," Jim replied, gesturing to the swaying crowd. "But our parties usually involve bad decisions and worse dancing." He glanced at the Zellhorns gracefully weaving through the throng. "This, though, this looks like a synchronized swimming routine without the water." Carell tilted her head, her glow deepening as if processing his words. "You speak as though you fear participation." "I fear embarrassing myself," Jim corrected, crossing his arms. "Big difference." Her smile widened. "Then you will fit in perfectly." Before Jim could protest, Carell took his arm and led him toward the dance floor. The music shifted to a slower, hypnotic tempo, and the dancers formed pairs, their movements fluid and deliberate. Carell?" Jim asked, his feet dragging slightly. "You know I'm not exactly Fred Astaire, right?" "Who is Fred Astaire?" she asked, her tone genuinely curious. "Never mind. Just don't laugh." Carell stopped and faced him, her glow warming slightly. "I make no promises." The dance was less about movement and more about connection, or so Carell explained as she guided Jim through the basics. "Your gaze is important," she said, her voice steady. "Follow mine, and let the rhythm guide your steps." "That sounds like something out of a fortune cookie," Jim muttered, earning a puzzled look from Carell. As the dance began, Jim focused on keeping his movements smooth and avoiding stepping on Carell's feet. Her eyes remained fixed on his, her glow shifting subtly with each beat of the music. Despite himself, Jim found the rhythm calming, the tension in his shoulders easing as he matched her graceful steps. Then it happened again. Carell's glow, which had been soft and serene, flared suddenly, turning a brilliant gold. The air around her seemed to ripple, and Jim felt a wave of heat radiating from her skin. Her movements faltered, and she broke eye contact, looking down as if to regain control. "Carell?" Jim asked, his voice low. "Are you okay?" I am fine," she said, though her glow remained bright, flickering like flames. "You don't look fine," Jim pressed, his concern outweighing his usual sarcasm. Carell stepped back, her glow dimming slightly but her expression tense. "It is nothing. Continue the dance." Jim hesitated but complied, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they resumed, he kept his gaze deliberately unfocused, glancing at her shoulder or the dancers around them instead of her eyes. "Better?" he asked, half joking. Carell's lips twitched in a faint smile. "You learn quickly." The celebration ended with a stunning display of light. Beams of energy shot into the sky, intertwining and exploding into cascades of color that painted the clouds. Jim found himself standing at the edge of the plaza, watching the display with quiet awe. Carell stood beside him, her glow subdued but steady. "What do you think?" she asked. "It's beautiful," Jim admitted. "Like a fireworks show, but without the loud noises and the risk of setting something on fire." Carell tilted her head. "Fireworks?" "Small explosions for entertainment," Jim explained, "because humans are nothing if not creative with ways to risk their lives." Carell laughed softly, her glow warming. "Your species is fascinating." "And yours is complicated," Jim said, glancing at her. "Like, for instance, what happened during the dance? You went full supernova on me." Carell stiffened, her glow dimming slightly. "It is a reaction, one that is difficult to explain. I'm not exactly a genius, but I can follow along," Jim said, his tone light. "Try me." Carell hesitated, her gaze fixed on the distant lights. "It is not something we discuss openly. Among my people, such reactions are private." Jim frowned. "Private as in embarrassing, or private as in classified alien biology?" Carell's glow shifted to a faint blue, a color Jim hadn't seen before. "Both," Recognizing the sensitivity of the topic, Jim decided to back off. Fair enough. Just let me know if I'm doing something wrong, okay? Last thing I want is to accidentally offend half your planet. Carell glanced at him, her glow warming again. You are kind, Lieutenant Hawkins. Clumsy, but kind. Clumsy? Jim repeated, feigning offense. I'll have you know I haven't tripped once since we landed. Carell's laughter returned, and the tension between them eased once more. Later that night, as Jim sat in his quarters, he replayed the evening in his mind. The dance, Carell's reaction, the cryptic warnings. Everything felt like pieces of a puzzle he wasn't yet equipped to solve. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. He glanced at the glowing panel on his wall, which displayed a message from Commander Richter. Hawkins, report to the briefing room at 0700. We need to debrief about tonight's events and your glowing dance partner. Jim sighed, leaning back on the marshmallow-like bed. Great. More awkward questions I don't have answers to. As he stared at the shifting lights on the ceiling, one thought lingered in his mind. Whatever was happening with Carell, it was only the beginning. The Zelhoran briefing chamber was a symphony of light. Rows of crystalline panels displayed holographic images of the galaxy, data streams and glowing symbols, and a real-time visual of Earth's delegation quarters. It reminded Jim Hawkins of being inside a computer, if that computer had been designed by someone who'd inhaled too much stardust. Commander Richter sat at the head of the Earth delegation table, her face a mask of composure. She gestured for Jim to take a seat, her sharp blue eyes narrowing in a way that made him feel like a schoolboy about to explain why his homework was late. Lieutenant Hawkins, she began, her voice clipped, explain to me why half the Zelhoran Council is now fascinated with you. Jim hesitated, his mind racing. I have a magnetic personality. Richter's expression didn't budge. Okay, Jim said, holding up his hands. There was a dance, I danced. Apparently not terribly, which is shocking, even to me. And Carell may have glowed more than usual. Glowed more? Richter repeated, one eyebrow arching like a skeptical hawk. You had to be there, Jim replied, leaning back in his chair. It was very bright. Richter sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. The Council suspects there's more to this than your atrocious humor. Carell's behavior during the celebration has raised questions about your interactions. Great, Jim said. First alien world, and I've already got a reputation. Not the kind you want, Richter shot back. They're concerned this could complicate negotiations. The last thing we need is to inadvertently offend their culture. Jim frowned, guilt worming its way into his gut. I didn't mean to. I know, Richter interrupted. But intentions don't matter here. Perception does. We're walking on a tightrope with the Zelhorans, and I need you to tread carefully. Jim nodded. Understood. No staring contests, no impromptu raves, and definitely no glowing aliens. Richter allowed herself a faint smile. Let's hope you stick to that. Jim left the briefing room with a heavy heart, only to find Carell waiting for him in the corridor. She leaned casually against one of the glowing walls, her posture relaxed but her eyes sharp. You eavesdropping? Jim asked, trying to sound light-hearted. Carell's glow shifted to a faint lavender. I have no need. Your commander's tone carried well beyond the room. Jim winced. She's just thorough. Carell straightened and walked beside him as they made their way back to the delegation quarters. It is understandable. Your people are new to interstellar diplomacy, and our customs are nuanced. Nuanced? Jim echoed, raising an eyebrow. Try incomprehensible. Like, for instance, what's the deal with the glowing thing? I'm pretty sure I didn't sign up for alien laser tag. Carell stopped, her expression turning serious. You truly do not understand, do you? Jim gestured vaguely. I'm trying, but it's like putting together IKEA furniture without the instructions. Carell tilted her head, clearly not understanding the reference, but too polite to ask. Our glow is more than a physical trait. It is tied to our biology, our emotions, and, in certain cases, our reproduction. Jim blinked, the last word hitting him like a brick. Reproduction? Carell's glow dimmed slightly, signaling discomfort. When prolonged eye contact occurs between two beings, it can activate certain processes in my species, processes that are difficult to control. Jim's brain raced as he connected the dots. Wait, are you saying I accidentally triggered something? Carell hesitated before nodding. Not intentionally, but yes. It is why I warned you not to stare too long. Jim groaned, running a hand through his hair. Great. So I'm not just the clueless human, I'm the clueless human causing hormonal chaos. Carell's glow shifted to a faint gold, a sign of her amusement despite the awkward topic. It is not as dramatic as you make it sound. The reaction is manageable provided we are cautious. Cautious, Jim repeated. Right. Cautious is my middle name. Carell gave him a skeptical look, and Jim couldn't help but laugh. Okay, maybe not, but I'll try. Their conversation was interrupted by a chime from Carell's communicator. She glanced at it, her glow dimming. What's up? Jim asked. The council has summoned us, she said. They wish to discuss your role in our negotiations. Jim groaned. Perfect. More chances for me to stick my foot in my mouth. Carell's glow brightened faintly. Do not worry, Lieutenant. I will ensure the council understands your quirks. Quirks? Jim said, mock-offended. I prefer to call it charm. Carell didn't respond, but the faint lavender in her glow suggested she was holding back laughter. The council chamber was as imposing as ever, its vaulted ceiling shimmering with light patterns that seemed to shift in response to the mood of the room. The elders sat in a semicircle, their expressions neutral but their glows subtly fluctuating. Jim stood beside Carell, his hands clasped behind his back in what he hoped was a professional stance. Lieutenant Hawkins, one of the elders began, their voice resonant, you have made an impression during your time here. Jim smiled awkwardly. I try to be memorable. The elder's glow dimmed slightly, suggesting they weren't amused. Carell stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. The lieutenant's actions were unintentional. He is unfamiliar with our customs and has shown great respect for our people. The elder regarded her for a long moment before nodding. Perhaps, but his presence has introduced variables we did not anticipate. Jim cleared his throat. If I've caused any problems, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Just point me in the direction of the apology gift shop. Several of the council members exchanged glances, their glows fluctuating. Carell shot Jim a warning look, but he could see the faintest trace of amusement in her eyes. Your willingness to adapt is noted, the elder said finally, but adaptation requires understanding. If you are to remain here, you must learn our ways. I'm a quick study, Jim said, flashing a grin. The elder's glow dimmed again, but Carell stepped in smoothly. I will oversee his education. He has already begun to grasp some of our subtleties. Very well, the elder said, but be cautious, Carell. The path ahead is delicate. As they left the chamber, Jim let out a long breath. That wasn't so bad. I mean, they didn't throw me out, right? Carell glanced at him, her glow faintly pink. Your charm may have saved you. Jim smirked. Told you it's a superpower. Carell didn't respond, but her faint smile suggested she might just be starting to believe him. Jim Hawkins had thought himself prepared for cultural education. After all, he'd survived military boot camp, eaten deep-fried scorpion on a dare in Bangkok, and once sat through an entire family reunion while being interrogated by 5 aunts about why he was still single. None of that prepared him for Carell's lesson in Zelhoran customs. You're serious? He asked, squinting at the shimmering interface hovering before him. The holographic display projected a Zelhoran anatomy diagram, complete with a color-coded legend and animated glow patterns. Carell stood beside him, her glow steady and faintly pink, a color he'd learned meant mild embarrassment. It is necessary, she said. If you are to interact with my people, you must understand the biological implications of your actions. Jim crossed his arms. You mean my eyes? Got it. No prolonged staring. It is not just the eyes, Carell said patiently. Body language, tone, even proximity can influence the interaction. Jim sighed. So basically, I'm a walking, talking mood ring for Zelhorans. Carell tilted her head, her glow flickering. Mood ring? It's a human thing, Jim said, waving his hand. It changes color based on heat. Pure pseudoscience, but somehow I feel like it applies here. Carell's glow shifted faintly lavender amusement. Then consider yourself an advanced version of your mood ring, one that must be handled carefully. Jim groaned. Advanced, huh? I'm starting to think I should have signed up for interstellar diplomacy for dummies before this mission. The classroom, as Jim had started calling it, was located in one of the Zelhorans' crystalline towers. The entire room felt alive, with walls that shimmered and shifted like the surface of a calm lake catching the sun. Holographic displays popped in and out of existence as Carell spoke, each one illustrating concepts that seemed both fascinating and overwhelming. Zelhoran bioluminescence, Carell explained, pointing to a glowing diagram of her species, is more than a physical trait. It is a language, a way of communicating emotions and intentions. Right, Jim said, squinting at the chart. So when you glow blue, you're sad? Or is it tired? Hungry? Carell blinked at him, her glow shifting to lavender again. Blue is contemplation. And no, it does not mean hungry. Hey, I'm just covering my bases, Jim said, grinning. I'd hate to misinterpret and accidentally offer you a sandwich. Carell's laugh was soft but genuine. Your humor is relentless. It's a coping mechanism, Jim admitted. Helps when I'm faced with glowing diagrams of alien emotions. Carell's expression softened, and her glow shifted to the warm silver he'd come to associate with affection. You are learning faster than you realize. As the lesson continued, Jim found himself genuinely intrigued. The Zelhoran's bioluminescence was a marvel of evolution, tied to everything from social bonding to reproduction. It was like a biological open book, except, as Carell explained, the pages could be misread by outsiders. For example, she said, summoning a holographic projection of two Zelhorans, prolonged eye contact paired with increased glow intensity signals a deep connection. Among close companions, it can be a gesture of trust, but between strangers it can have unintended consequences. Jim raised an eyebrow. Unintended? Like? Carell hesitated, her glow flickering. It may initiate a biological response akin to arousal in humans. Jim choked on his own breath. Wait, what? Just from looking at someone? Carell nodded, her glow deepening. It is why I have cautioned you. Your actions, though innocent, carry weight. Jim leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. So I'm like a laser pointer for catnip. Fantastic. Carell tilted her head. I do not understand this analogy. Don't worry about it, Jim said, waving her off. Let's just say I'll be extra careful not to turn anyone into a human, Zelhoran disco ball. The lesson wrapped up with a practical exercise, much to Jim's chagrin. Carell stood across from him, her glow steady. Maintain eye contact for 5 seconds, she instructed, but do not overfocus. Relax your gaze. Jim squinted. Relax my gaze? What does that even mean? Think of it as looking without seeing, Carell said. That sounds like something my drill sergeant would say right before yelling at me for doing it wrong. Carell's glow brightened faintly, but she held her ground. Focus, Lieutenant. Jim took a deep breath and met her gaze. The seconds stretched, each one feeling longer than the last. Carell's glow shifted subtly, a ripple of silver and lavender, and Jim felt an odd warmth in the air between them. Then, just as quickly, she broke eye contact. Good. You maintained balance. Jim blinked. Balance? What am I, a Jedi? Carell smiled. In some ways, you are learning to attune yourself to forces you cannot see. Jim smirked. Careful, Karel. You keep saying things like that, and I'll start calling you Yoda. Yoda? Never mind. Later that evening, as Jim returned to his quarters, he felt both drained and strangely exhilarated. The lesson had been intense, but enlightening. Karel's world, her people, were unlike anything he'd ever encountered. And despite the potential for disaster, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be. His communicator chimed, and he saw a message from Karel. Karel, you did well today. Rest, and tomorrow we will continue. Jim smiled, typing a quick reply. Jim. Thanks, Sensei. Same time, same glowing classroom? Her response came almost immediately. Karel. Yes. And try not to call me Sensei. It confuses my translator. Chuckling, Jim set the communicator aside and stretched out on his bed. As he stared at the softly glowing ceiling, he couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. Whatever it is, he muttered to himself, it's probably going to glow. The Zelhoran city of Vinith was like a symphony of light and motion. Towers of crystalline architecture hummed with energy, casting ever-shifting rainbows across the bustling streets below. The people moved with a rhythmic grace, their bioluminescent glows painting the air with emotions that seemed to blend seamlessly with the city's vibrant pulse. Jim Hawkins stood in the middle of it all, feeling like a tourist who had accidentally wandered into a private performance. He glanced at Karel, who walked beside him, her glow a serene shade of silver. So, he said, breaking the silence, what exactly are we shopping for? Please tell me it's not alien groceries. I don't know if I'm ready for glowing space broccoli. Karel's glow shifted faintly lavender, her version of a chuckle. We are not shopping, Lieutenant. The Council requested that I show you more of our daily lives. They believe it will deepen your understanding of our people. Ha, Jim said, nodding sagely. Cultural immersion, like a field trip. Do I get a souvenir? Karel tilted her head. If you wish. Many artisans here craft items infused with bioluminescent properties. Great, Jim said, grinning. Nothing says diplomatic mission like a glowing keychain. Their first stop was a communal gathering space, a vast plaza where Zelhorans mingled, their glowing forms creating an ever-changing tapestry of light. Jim couldn't help but gawk at the sight. It was beautiful, like watching a living aurora borealis. Karel led him to a central fountain, its water cascading in spirals that defied gravity. As Jim reached out to touch the liquid, it split into tiny droplets that hovered mid-air, forming glowing patterns before rejoining the flow. Okay, that's just showing off, Jim said, his grin widening. Karel's glow brightened slightly. Our technology often incorporates aesthetic design. Function and beauty are equally valued. Jim nodded, impressed. Makes sense. If you're going to invent something, might as well make it look cool. As they moved on, Jim noticed a group of children playing nearby. They chased one another, their glows flickering with excitement. One of them, a small Zelhoran with a vibrant orange hue, stopped to stare at him, wide-eyed. Hi, Jim said, waving awkwardly. The child tilted their head, then turned to Karel, their glow dimming slightly. Why does he not glow? Karel's expression softened. He is not Zelhoran. Humans do not emit light in the same way we do. The child frowned. That seems boring. Jim snorted. Kid, you're not wrong. Karel gave him a look but didn't comment. Their next stop was a workshop filled with Zelhoran artisans. The air shimmered with energy as holographic designs floated above glowing tools. One artisan worked on a piece of jewelry, carefully embedding tiny crystals that pulsed with soft light. Jim leaned closer, fascinated. So, do these things light up on command, or do they just glow all the time? It depends on the material, Karel explained. Some are reactive, changing color based on the wearer's emotions. Jim raised an eyebrow. Mood jewelry? You guys are really leaning into the whole glowing thing. Karel's glow flickered lavender. It is integral to our identity. Fair, Jim said. I mean, if humans could glow, we'd probably make it competitive. Like, Who's got the brightest glow at prom? Karel tilted her head. Prom? It's a human tradition, Jim said. A dance for teenagers. Lots of awkwardness and bad decisions. Karel's glow brightened faintly. It sounds memorable. Oh, it is, Jim said, smirking. For better or worse. As the day went on, Jim found himself growing more comfortable. He asked questions, cracked jokes, and even managed to navigate a conversation with a Zelhoran elder without causing an intergalactic incident. But as they walked back to the delegation quarters, Karel's glow shifted to a more somber hue. Everything okay? Jim asked, noticing the change. Karel hesitated. There is something I must discuss with you. It is delicate. Jim felt a pang of worry. Delicate how? Did I screw up again? No, Karel said quickly. It is not about what you have done. It is about what you must decide. Jim frowned. You're really leaning into the cryptic thing today. Karel stopped walking and turned to face him. Her glow dimmed, signaling seriousness. The Council has been observing your progress. They believe you have the potential to bridge our cultures, but they also fear the risks of our connection. Our connection? Jim echoed. Karel nodded. Our friendship, our interactions, have become a focal point. There is concern that it may disrupt the balance between our peoples. Jim ran a hand through his hair, processing her words. So what are they saying? That I shouldn't hang out with you anymore? Karel's glow shifted to a soft pink. Not exactly, but they may request that you limit certain interactions to avoid further misunderstandings. Jim sighed. Let me guess. This is about the glowing thing again. Karel didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. Look, Jim said, I get that your culture has rules, and I'm trying to respect them, but cutting ties completely? That seems extreme. Karel's glow flickered. I do not wish for that either, but we must consider the larger picture. Jim frowned, frustration bubbling up. The larger picture? Karel, you're not just some diplomatic liaison to me. You're my friend. Her glow brightened slightly, and she looked away. Friendship is rare between our species. It is uncharted territory. Jim smirked. Well, I've always been good at exploring uncharted territory. Karel's glow shifted to lavender, but the somber undertone remained. As they continued walking, Jim made a silent vow. Whatever the council decided, he wasn't going to let politics dictate his connection with Karel. Some things were worth fighting for, even if they glowed. The council chamber was a cathedral of light and sound, its walls alive with shifting patterns that reflected the mood of its occupants. At the center of the room stood Karel and Jim, facing a semicircle of Zelhoran elders, whose collective glow pulsed with deliberation. Jim had dressed for the occasion, which meant a clean uniform and an attempt to keep his sarcasm to a minimum, attempt being the operative word. Lieutenant Hawkins, the lead elder said, their glow a stately shade of blue. We have reviewed your actions during your time on Vinith. While your intentions seem sincere, the consequences of your interactions with Karel raise concerns. Jim nodded, his expression serious. I understand. But if I may, I think those concerns might be based on a misunderstanding. The elder's glow brightened slightly. Explain. Jim glanced at Karel, whose steady silver glow gave him a flicker of confidence. Turning back to the council, he said, I didn't come here to disrupt your way of life or to cause problems. I came here to learn, to connect. And yeah, I might have made a few missteps, like staring too long and accidentally triggering your biological processes. Karel's glow flickered pink, and Jim caught her smothering a smile. But the thing is, he continued, those mistakes taught me something. Your culture is built on light, literal and metaphorical. It's about openness, connection, and understanding, and that's something humans can learn from. The chamber fell silent except for the faint hum of the glowing walls. Finally, the elder spoke again. Your words are compelling, Lieutenant, but actions weigh heavier than intentions. Jim hesitated, then stepped forward. Okay, then let's talk actions. Carell and I have worked together, laughed together, and even argued. We've found common ground despite all the differences between us. Isn't that the whole point of this mission? To prove that our species can coexist? Carell stepped beside him, her glow brightening. I support his words. Our friendship has strengthened my belief in the potential of unity between our people. While his methods may be unconventional, they are effective. Jim smirked. Unconventional's my middle name. The elder's glow shifted lavender, a sign of mild amusement. Your argument carries merit, but trust must be earned, not assumed. To solidify this bond, you must demonstrate your commitment to mutual respect. Jim straightened. Name it, whatever it takes. The council's decision was both simple and profound. Jim would participate in a Zelhoran rite of passage, a symbolic journey through a labyrinthine structure known as the Light Nexus. The Nexus was a test of character and understanding, where participants faced challenges tied to their emotional and intellectual growth. This feels a lot like one of those escape rooms, Jim said as he and Carol stood at the entrance. Carol's glow flickered lavender. Except there is no timer or human pizza party at the end. Bummer, Jim said. Guess I'll settle for surviving. Carell placed a glowing hand on his shoulder. You will do well. Remember what you have learned. Right, Jim said, taking a deep breath. Glow with the flow. Carell's glow shifted lavender again. Close enough. The Nexus was like stepping into a living kaleidoscope. Light patterns twisted and shifted, creating pathways that seemed to defy logic. As Jim navigated the maze, he encountered challenges that forced him to reflect on his journey. In one chamber, holographic projections of humans and Zelhorans argued, their lights clashing like storm clouds. A disembodied voice asked, "How do you bridge a divide born of misunderstanding?" Jim hesitated before responding. By listening, by meeting in the middle, even if it's awkward and uncomfortable, and maybe with some bad jokes to lighten the mood. The lights swirled, forming a bridge that allowed him to cross to the next chamber. In another test, he faced a mirror that reflected not his image, but a glowing silhouette. It pulsed erratically, mirroring his own heartbeat. The voice asked, "What does it mean to be seen?" Jim thought of Carol, of how her glow shifted to reveal emotions she couldn't hide. Being seen means being vulnerable, letting someone in, even if it's scary, and trusting them not to look away. The mirror dissolved, revealing the final pathway. When Jim emerged from the Nexus, he found the council waiting, their glows a harmonious blend of silver and lavender. Carell stood beside them, her glow radiating pride. "You have passed," the lead elder said. "Your journey through the Nexus reflects your growth and understanding. You have proven that light can exist even in the void of uncertainty." Jim scratched the back of his neck. "So, does this mean I get a diploma or something?" Carell's glow flickered lavender. "Consider this your graduation." The council's glow shifted to a warm gold. "Let this moment mark the beginning of a new chapter between our peoples. May your light guide the way." As the delegation prepared to leave Vinith, Jim and Carell shared a quiet moment overlooking the city. The towers glowed softly against the twilight sky, their light reflected in the calm waters below. "So," Jim said, leaning against the railing, "think they'll put my picture in the Hall of Heroes for this?" Carell tilted her head. "Do humans have such a hall?" "Not really," Jim admitted, "but maybe they should." Carell's glow shifted to silver. "You have achieved much, Lieutenant, but your greatest accomplishment may simply be the bonds you have forged." Jim smiled. "You're not so bad at this friendship thing yourself." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Jim added, "So what happens now?" Carell's glow brightened. "Now we continue to build, one step, one connection at a time." Jim nodded, feeling a sense of closure and hope. For all their differences, he and Carell had found common ground, and in the vast, unpredictable universe, that was no small thing. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying him back toward Earth, Jim glanced out the window at the glowing city fading into the distance. "Not a bad first contact," he muttered to himself, grinning. Somewhere, he knew, Karel's glow would be a steady silver, just as his own light, though unseen, burned a little brighter than before.